Spring is almost here, and horror knows exactly what to do with that kind of false comfort. Because late March is a dangerous little stretch of the calendar. The days look brighter, the air says maybe we made it through the cold, and that's exactly when the genre likes to remind you that danger doesn't care what season it is. This week, the threats aren't hiding in one shape. They're mutating in the desert. They're loading from a game screen. They're smiling across a bar. They're waiting inside an abandoned hospital for one more camera crew to go poking around where they absolutely should not. So, keep your headset on, keep your flashlight charged, and maybe don't click go live unless you're ready for the audience to watch something go very, very wrong. In fact, maybe the button should be more accurate and say, go dead. Welcome back to This Week in Horror History, your weekly time machine through the creepiest anniversaries in film, TV, books, and games. I'm your host, Enrique Couto, and this week spans March 23rd through 29th. Coming up, a brutal desert sequel where military training turns into mutant survival. A mid-2000s killer game movie that feels like a cursed Hot Topic shelf come to life. A South Korean found footage nightmare that turns a live stream into a panic attack. And some very angry sheep proving that genetic engineering and pastoral scenery do not mix. Then after the break, our deep cut spotlight, a neon-soaked Brooklyn cult favorite where temptation doesn't just ruin you, it hunts you. March 23rd, 2007, The Hills Have Eyes 2 hits theaters and takes the remake-era desert nightmare into pure, mean, dusty siege mode. Not to be confused with the original The Hills Have Eyes 2, which features a flashback attributed to a German Shepherd. I kind of love that movie, I don't care. Instead of a family road trip, this one gives us National Guard trainees on what's supposed to be a routine exercise, which is great if your idea of a routine exercise includes abandoned bunkers, irradiated wasteland vibes, and mutants who know the terrain better than anyone trying to cross it. It's not subtle, not at all. It's not polite. It's a mid-2000s horror sequel that understands the assignment. Throw people into a hostile landscape, strip away every comfort, and make survival feel filthy. Financially, it did solid sequel business, about $37.7 million worldwide on a $15 million budget, and that's something I won't digress massively on, but people often don't understand the general economics of sequels. While we all love to think of movies like Friday the 13th, The Nightmare on Elm Street, movies where every sequel was a bigger and bigger and bigger box office, in general, the actual business model for sequels is very simple. Spend less money on advertising because everybody remembers the first film, which was a giant hit, and then even if the box office diminishes, and it always does a little bit, and then a little bit, and then a little bit, you're still scraping in the cash hand over bloody fist. As far as where to watch, you can rent or purchase it on Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, and of course, Fandango at home. On March 24th, 2006, Stay Alive arrives and gives us one of the most aggressively 2000 horror premises imaginable. What if the video game kills you for real? And honestly, that premise, it still clicks, although BrainScan did it perfectly. This is peak cursed object horror translated through gamer anxiety. It's got headsets, save points, haunted backstory, and the creeping dread that the rules of the game are starting to leak into ordinary life. It's got that glossy studio-era PG-13 energy, but there's something charmingly committed about the whole thing. At the box office, it managed a small win, about $27.3 million worldwide on a $20 million budget, so not necessarily a hit. So if you want to give this little gem a repeat view, another playthrough, you can check it out free with a library card on Hoopla or rent and buy it digitally on Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, and of course, our friends at Fandango at Home. On March 28, 2018, Gonjiam Haunted Asylum drops in South Korea and turns the "let's live stream a haunting" setup into one of the best found footage jolts of the last decade, and that's saying something. The genius here is that it understands modern horror performance. Everybody's playing to the camera. Everybody's half-performing fear before the real stuff shows up. And once the movie starts tightening the screws, that fake online bravado curdles and fast. And it wasn't just a cult film either. Gonjiam was a breakout hit, grossing $21 million on a reported $2.2 million budget. Something about South Korea, they can really knock it out of the ballpark when it comes to scaring all of us. So if you want to check this one out, I highly recommend you do. It's streaming right now via Amazon Prime Video with your subscription. You can also watch it free with ads on Tubi TV, Zumo Play, the Roku channel, and Plex. But don't live stream watching it. That would be a little too meta and might not necessarily go the way you're hoping. And on March 29th, 2007, Black Sheep hits New Zealand theaters and asks a question horror comedy should ask more often. What if the countryside itself got rabies? This flick is gleefully ridiculous in the best way possible. I'm not even a huge horror comedy guy, and even I appreciate all that they did with Black Sheep. Genetic engineering goes sideways, so fluffy farm animals turn carnivorous, and the movie commits completely to the bit. It's part creature feature, part splatter comedy, and all bad. It grossed about $5 million worldwide, not a giant hit, but enough to earn permanent "you have got to see this one" status, and it was huge on DVD and later on streaming. And speaking of streaming, if you want to give this bad sheep a little love and a little bit of blood, you can catch it free with ads on Tubi TV and Plex, and of course you can rent or buy it on Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, and Fandango at Home. Tomorrow on the WeeklySpooky feed, a night at the carnival, a fortune teller with a warning, a black cat that should have been left alone. Katriana thinks it's all superstition, right up until one cruel, stupid act turns her whole life into a curse. Because after that night, anybody whose path she crosses is living on borrowed time. And once the death begins, they do not come quietly. They come in explosions, impalements, fire, blood, and panic. And what makes it worse is she figures it out too late. The boyfriend, the bystanders, the family, the police, every step becomes a death sentence. And the nastiest part of all, this curse doesn't just want bodies, it wants her alone. Right here tomorrow, Wednesday, WeeklySpooky brings you Black Cat, by Rob Fields, a vicious supernatural nightmare about bad luck, worse choices, and what happens when an old warning stops being folklore and starts becoming a body count. By the time she realizes how to stop it, it may already be too late. So make sure you're subscribed and come back by tomorrow for a brand new piece of horror fiction. When we come back, we're going into our deep cut spotlight, and we're heading to the inner city for it. It's slick, smoky, funny, dangerous, and built around the kind of city-at-night menace that makes every neon light feel like a bad decision in the waiting. And at the center of it all is a monster who doesn't kick down the door. She gets invited in. Alright, we're back, so let's get into it. For our deep cut spotlight, we head to March 23rd, 1999. Death by Temptation hits theaters, and it remains one of the coolest, most distinctive cult horror movies of its era. Written, directed, and starring James Bond III, no relation, it drops supernatural horror into late-night New York and comes out feeling intimate, funny, seductive, and genuinely dangerous. The setup is simple and nasty. A young minister in training reconnects with his worldly best friend, and both of them get pulled into the orbit of a succubus who is less femme fatale and more spiritual landmine. What makes the film really stick is its texture. The city nightlife feels warm until it feels poisoned. The banter is loose and likable until you realize death is circling every scene. The whole thing has that wonderful low-budget confidence where style isn't polished and smooth, but more so alive. Death by Temptation deserves way more conversation, especially when people talk about black horror and everyone talking about Sinners right now and all of its Academy Award nominations and its 3 awards. It's also a serious footnote in the 1990s cult favorites category, and movies that feel like they belong to a very specific late-night hour. It also features a very young Samuel L. Jackson, and that alone is worth the price of admission. I remember when Joe Bob Briggs showed this on the last drive-in, people were very surprised that he picked it. I wasn't, because I vaguely remembered it, and after revisiting, I realized this, my friends, is a winner. If you've never seen it, well, it's time to fix that, and if you've seen it but it was a long time ago, fix that too. It's currently streaming right now on Amazon Prime Video with your subscription, Shudder with a subscription, AMC Plus with a subscription, Troma Now with a subscription, and it's free with ads on Tubi TV, Pluto TV, and Plex. So get your vampire on tonight. All right, my spookies, let's take a look at some birthdays for this week. On March 24th, 1930, Steve McQueen is born. Forever the cool guy in lots of action films, he's really legendary for them, but in horror history, he'll always be the teenage lead in The Blob. And what a lead he was. A very happy birthday to Steve McQueen. On March 25th, 1942, Richard O'Brien is born. The delightfully strange architect of the Rocky Horror Show and the later, very beloved Rocky Horror Picture Show. The kind of thing you like, if you like that kind of thing. A very happy birthday to Richard O'Brien. Oh boy, this one. On March 26th, 1931, Leonard Nimoy was born. Long before One Raised Eyebrow became legend, he was already turning up in Them and other genre staples, but of course, he's most famous as Mr. Spock on Star Trek, and as a lifelong Trekkie, I've always loved Leonard Nimoy, and another horror-adjacent Leonard Nimoy element, by the way, would be him hosting In Search Of. There were several episodes of that show that brought me a lot of fear and even a couple of nightmares. A very happy birthday to Leonard Nimoy. And born on March 24th, 1977, Jessica Chastain. She brings prestige to the Panic in genre work like Mama, Crimson Peak, and It, Chapter 2, as well as being one of the biggest Hollywood stars out there. A very happy birthday, Jessica Chastain. Our Then and Now this week gives you horror as a form of failed containment. In 1990, temptation itself is stalking the city. In 2006, a game stops staying on the screen. In 2007, the desert and the farm both become hostile ecosystems. And by 2018, even the act of filming your own fear has become part of the trap. Different monsters, different decades, same bad news. The thing you thought you were controlling is already controlling you. For our weekly recommendation, we head back to March 24th, 2017, when Life opens in the US. If you want something that matches this week's mood, people poking at danger because they think they've got protocols for it, cue up Life from 2017. This is a tight little pressure cooker of space horror. Smart people, expensive equipment, a sealed environment, and one rapidly evolving organism that absolutely does not care about anyone's procedures. What makes it work is the escalation. It starts with wonder, then concern, then that awful realization that every safety measure is really just buying the next 10 minutes of panic. By the end, it feels like a lab accident stretched to feature length, but in the best way possible. It made about $100 million worldwide on a $58 million budget, which is respectable business for a nasty, downbeat studio sci-fi horror movie. That is a huge budget to do any horror, but I remember seeing it in the theater, and I sure did enjoy it. Not a favorite or anything, but something worth appreciating, nonetheless. So if you want to give it a watch right now, it's easy. Just rent or purchase it on Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, or Fandango at home. Well, my spookies, that's your trip through March 23rd to 29th in horror history. Remember, tomorrow, Wednesday, there's a fresh horror story waiting for you on the Weekly Spooky feed. And of course, on Monday, we have a brand new episode of Monthly Spooky where we'll be digging into the creepy news and topics that you may never want to explore alone in the dark. So stay safe out there and keep your blood-soaked enthusiasm maxed out. I'll be back here next week to bring you another piece of horror history for your appreciation. Until then, remember, our days are numbered, because that's how we tell them apart. See you next week.